It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. 2 deaths following the Notting Hill Carnival. A mother killed in front of her 3-year-old daughter and a chef attacked on a visit to London.
We shared information about 2 people with very serious injuries. I'm very sad to tell you now that both have since died.
A political earthquake in Germany as a far-right party is on the verge of winning the most votes in state elections for the first time since the Nazis.
There is a fascist danger in Germany. Not only in Germany, it's spreading all over the world.
Difficult days ahead, the SNP's assessment of life in Scotland under the Labour government. And definitely maybe sold out. Hundreds of thousands of fans look back in anger at the battle for Oasis tickets. Plus in sport, back-to-back hat-tricks for Erling Haaland see Manchester City continue their winning start to the new season. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. The Metropolitan Police has launched 2 murder investigations after 2 people died, having been attacked in separate incidents over the bank holiday weekend. Cher Maximin was stabbed in front of her child when she tried to intervene in a fight at the carnival last Sunday. And then on Monday night, Musi Imnetu was found unconscious near the celebrations. Police are keen to talk to anyone who can help piece together his movements that day. Now, officers know that at 1 p.m. he left the Arts Club in Dover Street, but for 9.5 hours after that, his whereabouts are unknown. At around 10:30 p.m., Mr. Imnetu arrived at Dr. Power restaurant on Queensway, and police believe that he was attacked around 50 minutes later. He was found unconscious with a head injury in Queensway at 11:22 p.m. Sky's Ashna Hurinag has tonight's first report.
32-year-old Cher Maximin and 41-year-old Musie Imnetu. Both had been celebrating at Carnival when both were attacked in separate incidents. And after almost a week in hospital, both have now died from their injuries.
Musie was taken to hospital, where despite the best efforts of medical staff, he sadly died on Friday afternoon. Officers and paramedics provided first aid and Cher was transported to hospital in a critical condition. Despite the hard work of medical staff, Cher sadly died this morning.
Cher had been with family and friends. She had tried to separate a fight on Sunday evening, but was stabbed in the groin. Her 3-year-old daughter, who was also with her, is being supported by specialist officers. So too is the family of Musie Imnetu. Originally from Sweden, he'd been visiting from Dubai, where he was a successful head chef, having worked under Gordon Ramsay and Marcus Waring. The father of one had enjoyed a meal at this private members' club on Monday evening, where he used to work. But hours later, officers found him unconscious with a head injury 2 miles away, outside this restaurant. Friends are paying tribute to a kind and caring soul who was a truly great chef. Officers will spend the next few days here speaking to potential witnesses, of which there may have been many. The annual street party celebration of Caribbean culture saw almost 1 million people descend on the streets of Notting Hill over the bank holiday weekend. These deaths have shaken organisers. Notting Hill Carnival is shocked by these tragic deaths, and our thoughts are with the victims' families and the local community as a whole, which, like so many others, has suffered all too often from the blight of violent crime. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, joined them in condemning the violence. My thoughts, he says, are with the families and friends of Cher Maximin and Musie Imnetu at this terrible time. This violence is shocking, completely unacceptable, and a betrayal of the values that Carnival was founded to celebrate. This is the first time in a quarter of a century that 2 people have died at Notting Hill Carnival. Police say this traditional bank holiday event is increasingly being marred by unacceptable violence brought on by a minority of people using it as an opportunity for crime. A 20-year-old man and a 31-year-old are each due in court next month. charged with offences relating to Cher's and Musier's deaths. Their families, meanwhile, are in mourning and without answers at how a day of festivity ended in tragedy.
Well, Ashna Hurinag is in Notting Hill for us tonight. Ashna, what's the latest on the investigations?
Well, the Home Secretary has described this news today as deeply distressing and shocking. The last time that Carnival saw a death was in 2022 when a 21-year-old father-to-be was also stabbed to death in this way. And therefore people here have been horrified to learn that Cher died this morning and Musier died yesterday of his injuries in hospital. He, we understand it, was on a business trip. He'd been eating at the sister restaurant that he worked at, both working here in Dubai at one time before moving on to Dubai from London. We understand that he was a keen footballer. He shared his passion of cooking, though, as many have paid tribute to his 8-year-old son, who, of course, he leaves behind. Officers here, meanwhile, press on with their murder investigations, as they have now turned into 2 separate murder investigations led by the homicide unit at the Metropolitan Police. Officers there are keen to speak to witnesses to try and build a picture of what happened at these 2 separate incidents, trying to get to grips with what may have happened in the moments that led up to those ultimately deaths. We know that they will be in the area over the coming days. They'll be speaking to local people and local businesses. Meanwhile, the friends, the families, the colleagues of these 2 individuals are being described tonight as being inconsolable after this news.
Ashna Hurinag with the latest there from Notting Hill. Ashna, thank you. The far-right Alternative for Germany is predicted to win at least one of 2 elections in eastern states of the country this weekend. While unlikely to be able to form a state government, it could be the first time that a far-right party has the most seats in the state parliament since World War II. Sky's Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins reports.
In East Germany, these protesters are worried. Nazis out, they shout. The far right is rising here in Thuringia, and for the first time since the Nazis, an extreme right party is expected to win the most seats in the state parliament when people vote on Sunday.
I come today because there is a fascist danger in Germany. Not only in Germany, it's spreading all over the world, in Europe especially, and in Germany. And we are here to set a sign against the fascist danger.
Why do you think they've become popular, though?
They are very angry about the government, and they think they can protest against the government by voting for the AfD.
This is why they're worried. Björn Höcke and his far-right AfD party is on track to get around 30% of the vote here. Anti-immigration, Russian-friendly, Eurosceptic.
Germany first, Deutschland zuerst.
A man labelled a fascist from a party branch security services say is extremist, but whose supporters believe is Germany's future. The AfD is the only party that does something for the people, Martin says.
People say Björn Höcke is a fascist or he's dangerous.
No.
No?
No.
You think he's okay?
He is okay. It's propaganda.
If what you're hearing sounds familiar, it's because it is. Whether it's concerns about immigration or a feeling that mainstream politicians have forgotten them, the issues which are fueling the far right here in Germany are also fueling it across Europe.
The arrest of an asylum seeker over last week's fatal knife attack in Solingen has bolstered the AfD's anti-immigration stance. Their closest competitors, the Christian Democrats, have also taken a harder line on asylum seekers in a bid for votes, aware dissatisfaction feeds the far right.
Unrest within the society leads to a much more increase in populists on the far right and on the far left. And this all together formulates, let's say, a magical formula for right now a very unstable political situation.
While it's unlikely the AfD will get total control of the parliament here, This vote has highlighted the deepening divisions in society and fears the far right strengthening its grip in Germany. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Thuringia.
The SNP's Westminster leader has accused the Chancellor Rachel Reeves of showing ignorance over how the Scottish Government works amid a row over public spending. Stephen Flynn told the party's conference in Edinburgh that Labour was failing to deliver the change it promised in the general election campaign. From Edinburgh, our political correspondent Rob Powell sent us this report.
Edinburgh, and a smaller conference than usual for the SNP after big losses at the general election. Familiar faces, but as membership numbers flag, it's a new era for the party. Senior figures searching for answers and setting priorities.
Independence will always be the backbone of the SNP. It's why many joined the party. But we saw in the most recent election that voters didn't see independence as being the most urgent issue, and it wasn't really at stake in the election. The mission for the SNP is to illustrate, demonstrate that independence is the answer to many of the other challenges.
But you don't have to look far here to find those who'd like a more muscular approach to the push for independence.
People feel that we're not pushing that enough. Members feel that should be at the forefront of everything.
No country, in my knowledge, and I know a little bit about history, ever got its independence by asking politely.
But as well as looking back, the party is also trying to set a path forward.
The next big electoral challenge for the SNP is the Scottish Parliament elections in 20 months' time. A resurgent Labour senses the chance to seize power back for the first time in 20 years. But amid the doom and gloom coming from Downing Street, the party here has spotted a political front to fight on.
The party's Westminster leader training his fire on Sir Keir Starmer amid pressure on the public finances in Scotland.
Can you pin this on Labour, though? Some of this is down to the spending decisions that the SNP have made, isn't it?
OK, let's address that one head on, because what we have here is Rachel Reeves saying that, firstly, the Scottish Government has overspent on its budget when it can't, is legally not able to do so, so she's shown her ignorance towards the devolved settlement. But secondly, when it comes to those public sector pay the deals that we've struck, that's absolutely the right thing to do, because it's meant that we've not had the strikes that have plagued England for the last couple of years.
Seasoned observers say the strategy for the Holyrood election is a familiar one.
What they will do is they will say that Labour has continued austerity north of the border. They're continuing with Tory cuts, and they'll try and make it maybe a referendum on Keir Starmer and his government.
First Minister John Swinney will give his maiden conference speech as leader on Sunday. The SNP trying to hand some hope back to its members. The fear is the party may still have further to fall. Rob Powell, Sky News in Edinburgh.
Temporary pauses in fighting in some areas of Gaza are due to begin within hours to enable international aid agencies to begin a mass vaccination program against polio. The aim is to immunize more than 600,000 children aged under 10. It's after the disease was discovered in the territory for the first time in 25 years. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has this report.
Traces of polio were first discovered in Gaza's sewage system in late July. Earlier this month, a 10-month-old Palestinian baby was diagnosed with the virus. He's been paralysed in the lower part of one leg. It is the first case of polio in Gaza for 25 years.
I feel sad. I actually don't know how to describe how I'm feeling. My only son getting this disease, with no available treatment, and the borders are closed. War is going on, and our situation is tough. The place where we are is unclean. The tent is unclean. Even water is not clean. All of these circumstances are not good for him, and I can't handle it, nor am I able to deal with it.
The first vaccination started today, a day earlier than expected. But the main programme is set to begin properly on Sunday. The World Health Organization is hoping to immunise 640,000 children under the age of 10. 1.3 million oral doses of the vaccination have already been moved into Gaza, along with the cooling equipment to preserve it. It is not a widespread ceasefire. Israel says its military operations will continue elsewhere in Gaza.
What's going to happen? Tomorrow, on the 1st September, we will start a polio campaign in what we call the central zone in Gaza. We will do that for 3 days, and we probably need one more day.
Moving around Gaza has become increasingly dangerous for aid organisations. Earlier this week, the IDF shot at a vehicle belonging to the World Food Programme. It was hit 10 times. The UN agency briefly paused operations in Gaza. The negotiated pauses in fighting to vaccinate children against polio are fragile truces. But the alternative of polio spreading in Gaza and very possibly crossing into Israel too has forced Hamas and Israel into this rare agreement. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Jerusalem.
There have been website outages, error messages, and lots of disappointment for thousands of Oasis fans. But for a lucky group, it has been worth the wait. Fans spent hours online today trying to secure tickets for the reunion tour to see the Gallagher brothers perform together for the first time in 15 years. The band announced tickets had finally sold out at 7 p.m. Sky's arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer now reports.
Two brothers, 17 reunion gigs, and one slightly grating song if you missed out on tickets. Fans creative while they waited patiently in online queues, just about finding the funny side. Not since Brexit have friendship groups been quite so divided, with half the countries seeing messages like these. Thankfully, the Lee family, super fans from Solihull, got through.
It was very stressful on the hour before we got them. There was a lot of pacing around going on.
I literally screamed. I was so excited.
For many, a case of denial.
I feel like this is giving me hope.
Anger.
Pretty confident this did not work.
Bargaining.
I'll pay for the ticket, that's fine, but you can camp in my garden.
Before depression.
It's not looking good either.
And eventually acceptance.
It's been a long old morning. We'll keep trying, but failing that, we'll probably just stand outside with a couple of cans at Heaton Park.
Hours later, the nation finally put out of its misery.
Well, what a way to start a weekend. And while the Gallagher brothers may have got over their falling out, this scramble to get tickets has prompted a fair few petulant strops among their fans.
I know my brother better than anybody else.
Not part of the master plan, tickets already being sold on for inflated prices. Oasis promising on social media to cancel tickets that go for more than face value.
They put in a load of hurdles to stop touts from buying too many tickets, the 4 tickets per household, that general knowledge question on the pre-sales.
But then this note later added by X for context, saying in opting for dynamic pricing, the band itself was allowing Ticketmaster to charge more than face value for some tickets. Will it be worth it? Former Sun editor Dominic Mohan still has his £22 Nebworth ticket and encountered the band a fair few times back then.
You never really knew which Liam you were going to get. I mean, I remember going to Tokyo to see the band and bumping into Liam in a hotel bar, and he talked to me for 2 hours about the birth of his child, and it was a very poignant interview. But at the end of it, he threw a pint of Guinness at me.
Given demand, it's hard to see how extra dates won't end up being added. And if not, well, really, who needs to see a couple of aged rockers trotting out their greatest hits anyway? Not when we can sing it ourselves. So in the words of Oasis, Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Time now for a look at some of the day's other stories. A controlled explosion got out of hand opposite the O2 Arena in East London tonight. Residents were alarmed by the noise and smoke, but police confirmed it was pre-planned filming. One van was destroyed. Firefighters say they've now put out the fire and nobody has been hurt. The bodies of 3 children and a man have been discovered at a house in Surrey. Police were called to a property in Bremer Road in Staines-upon-Thames at around 1:15 p.m. on Saturday. Surrey police said an investigation was underway to establish the circumstances of the deaths. US rapper Fat Man Scoop has died after collapsing on stage during a performance in Connecticut. The 53-year-old's tour manager made the announcement on social media. The musician, whose real name was Isaac Freeman III, rose to fame for his 2003 hit, Be Faithful. Amy Truesdale and Matt Bush wrote their names into the history books by grabbing Great Britain's maiden Paralympic Taekwondo golds on a milestone evening in Paris. It's also been a great day for Paralympics GB in the pool after Alice Tai dominated the women's S8 100-meter backstroke, winning by almost 6 seconds and setting a new Paralympic record. William Ellard won gold in the S14 men's 200-meter freestyle, setting a new world record in the process. And Stephen Clegg won gold in the S12 men's 100-meter backstroke final, also breaking the world record. High street salons offering cosmetic procedures are on the rise, and one reason is said to be the ITV hit dating show Love Island. Rachel Venables has spoken to a former contestant about their struggles with body image.
My best feature is probably my smile, because I smile a lot.
Former Love Island contestant Marlin Anderson started getting cosmetic surgery young.
Around my late teens, I'd say around 19 years old, 20 years old. I was cabin crew and people were talking about lip filler. And then I got it done once and I started to develop more body dysmorphia. I'd look in the mirror, see my lips, think they weren't big enough, and then I kept repeating it.
As her career developed, it escalated. Now she sees cosmetic surgery as a form of addiction, encouraged by a huge list of factors.
So there's social media, there's the media, there's on the news, online, there's diets, there's a diet culture, the magazines. But what it boils down to is not being authentic to who you are. I wanted to alter how I looked like because I didn't find love from my caregivers growing up. And I thought if I changed my appearance, I'd be loved.
But it's thought thanks to shows like Love Island and celebrity influencers such as the Kardashians, the beauty industry is booming, with more and more younger women seeking cosmetic surgery.
With Love Island, I saw a dramatic increase in younger, mostly women, requesting dermal filler packages, wanting to achieve a Love Island look because they'd seen people on TV and they were like, I want to look like that. Again, I'm not an advocate for these sorts of things. I don't do packages. Aesthetic treatments are not about looking like someone else. They're about small, subtle tweaks to improve your appearance.
New data shows the number of salons offering such treatment on the UK's high streets increased by 31% over the last 5 years. The highest jump regionally was in the north of England, with a 46% increase, followed by Scotland, where there was a 42% rise. But for some, the young age of people seeking these procedures is really concerning.
We really believe within the Mental Health Foundation that actually this is a public health issue. What we are really concerned about is the commercialisation, effectively, that's taking place within the beauty industry, which includes these aesthetic procedures and cosmetic surgery. And actually, these are irreversible and quite often things that could have significant detriment effects on your wider physical health as well as your mental health. And as you say, we're getting into a stage now where young people are potentially getting into debt.
But with procedures becoming more and more accessible on our high streets, it's easier than ever for young people to try to look like the stars they idolise, no matter the cost. Rachel Venables, Sky News.
Okay, let's get the latest sport now from Sky Sports News and Louise.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Anna, nice to speak to you. I mean, I'm sure you're well aware and you get asked a lot that Jurgen Klopp was the former manager at Liverpool. But the fact that he was here for 8 years and the way that team played and for the players, the system is so ingrained in them. How much of a challenge has that been for you in the pre-season to get your ideas across?
Maybe in pre-season not that difficult because the ones that were there were not the ones where Jurgen worked with for so many years. And I think it helped that we had some good results over there. Players and also people around us were positive about the way we played. But I think one of the main things why, if they buy in, which is I believe they do, but why they do is that the differences are not that big. So there are only small differences between Jürgen and me, and the general idea of how we want to play football is, I think, quite similar.
What would you class as the biggest difference then between your type of football and Jürgen's, if there is any?
Yeah, I would prefer not to come up with it myself, because now people are going to emphasize on it. But I think, although it's difficult because I saw many Liverpool games, we didn't see all of them. But the way I looked at it was that they used every moment they could to play the ball in behind or deep. That meant that the game was always also sometimes a bit open, especially in the last period of Jürgen. And sometimes I tell them, okay, get a better judgment in risk and reward. So if you can put someone in front of the goalkeeper, please try to do so. If not, it's also a good idea sometimes to keep the ball. But I think if Jürgen was in the room now, he would have told us, yeah, I wanted to keep the ball once in a while as well. But in general, I see that some players are always, too many times in my opinion, try to play the difficult ball, which doesn't get the reward that for the risk they take in this ball.
We go back to last week away at Ipswich. I mean, when you look back at the game, certainly that first half, was that a shock, a surprise, the atmosphere, the quality, the energy from Ipswich, and was that something that maybe you don't see so much in the Eredivisie?
No, that intensity and that atmosphere you mostly saw in our own stadium at Feyenoord, in the Kuip, especially the atmosphere. That we were facing this intensity, that was not a surprise for me. I think if you play a newly promoted team, and I think I'm correct, they promoted 2 times in a row, so there's only positive energy in and around that team. So it was maybe a difficult moment to play them, because I expect maybe in 10 games, if they've lost a few more times, then the energy of the whole stadium is also different. But to play them now, you could expect them to be all on top of it. And we were ready for that, because we didn't concede anything, but we were not ready to create chances. And that is something we have to do much better. That if that intensity comes, if they are playing us 1v1 all over the pitch, we, with the quality we have, should be able to create a few chances. That didn't happen in the first half. Fortunately, we made that up in the second half a lot, because then we arrived many times in their 18-yard box.
You said how well Trent performed with the ball on Saturday. Obviously, Mo Salah was fantastic as well, got the goal, you know, Virgil as well as myself. So, I mean, what would your role be in terms of helping them sign a contract and, you know, to stay at the club in the future? Obviously, the hierarchy will deal with the money side of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, the only thing I have to do, what I do with all of them, is getting and bringing the best out of them. And if we bring the best out of them and they perform really well, yeah, then it's up to them. If they want to sign, it's up to the club and us, if we give them a new contract. But until now, it's nothing been but positive. Mo came back really strong in terms of physique. Virgil came back really strong. Trent did the same. And they brought in some good performances against Ipswich, which was only the first game, like all the others. But trying to get.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
And that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng and the broadcaster Joanna Jarju. Welcome both. Now, among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Express, the headline, pubs warn of smoking ban violence. We'll be right back.
United Kingdom.
These last few years have seen some huge stories. And these stories have been driven by politics, by politicians, the people in power.
You must stay at home.
And it's my job to figure out how these decisions made by politicians impact all of us in our everyday lives.
This is the worst thing I've ever been through in my life.
People turn up here with their child stuff in a black sack and just say, don't want to.
And that is what it is. It's first-class poverty.
Is this an example of the welfare state failing?
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
These are stories that affect us all. Millions of children are now having to catch up. Some stories have changed all of our lives. Because like the residents, the staff are being infected. Politicians, they make decisions all of the time, and it's our job to hold them to account. I wonder if you will take this opportunity to apologise to those families. But in the end, the real power doesn't actually lie with the politicians. The real power lies with the people. I'm Nick Martin. I'm the People and Politics correspondent at Sky News.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, our top stories. A mother and the chef have died days after separate attacks at Notting Hill Carnival. Oasis fans have complained after the website to buy tickets for the band's reunion tour crashed. And the SNP has said there will be difficult days ahead in Scotland under the Labour government. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng and the broadcaster Joanna Jarju. Now let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, The Observer features new research which reveals that lengthy NHS waiting times mean most people expect to have to use private healthcare for routine treatments. The Express reports on warnings from landlords that the government's tough crackdown on outdoor smoking could trigger violent clashes outside pubs. The Telegraph says teaching unions are calling on the government to cut down the number of tests in primary schools to help curb pupil anxiety. The Times reports on the government's pledge to crack down on what they call an absence epidemic in schools. The Mirror reports on plans by Netflix to release a new documentary about child serial killer Lucy Letby. And the Mail on Sunday leads with an exclusive which claims Prince Harry has sought advice from former aides to help plan his return from the United States. And online Supernova reads the Sunday People after millions scramble to secure their place at the Oasis reunion tour, causing ticket websites to crash. And the reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Anita Boateng and Joanna Jarju. Thank you both so much for joining us. OK, let's go to the Observer front page there. The NHS, one of the stories that I mentioned there in the review. NHS queues mean most people expect to go private. So it says the UK drifting towards a two-tier health system. And Anita, what's crucial about this is that it's not necessarily for emergency, situations like, I don't know, quite an aggressive cancer. It's routine procedures as well.
Yes, and really this is not about what people are actually doing, although, the Observer has some great detail about how nearly 900,000 people were admitted to private hospitals in 2023, which is a record. But it's about people's expectations. And so what you have in this is the Joseph Rowntree Foundation do focus groups, talking to different groups about what they think. And they expect, and there's been a kind of critical shift in expectations about whether or not they're going to be able to count on the NHS. And so this includes a sort of, people think that to have a decent living in the UK, they now need a £200 a year spending envelope for private healthcare. So £200 probably doesn't get you that far in private healthcare, but it shows a shift in expectations. And really, because of the seismic nature of the election, it's really up to the Labour government to show that they can repair, most importantly, the NHS. And that is one of the tests that there will be, that they will have to meet in order to successfully continue to be re-elected in the next election.
Joanna, what do you make of it? And does this research surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. Obviously, for the last couple of years, all we've been talking about is the NHS waiting list. There's a lot of people, especially people who maybe would have just gone to their GP for something routine and maybe would have got a cancer diagnosis, have found themselves in hot water because of these waiting lists. And it's really a shame for the country because, the NHS is the thing that we take most pride in within the country, free at the point of use, but now people aren't even able to go for their normal checkups. And I completely agree that, this is going to be a big task for Labour, and it just shows that even though we've just got this new government, confidence hasn't really been restored, even though they're saying that they're going to have 40,000 more appointments in the NHS. And obviously Wes Streeting has been talking about using the private sector as well to alleviate some of that, those waiting lists. So it's going to be a big task to just change people's mindsets even, because I think that the confidence has definitely been ruined.
Just quickly about changing people's mindsets. In a lot of other European countries, some treatments, countries that are similar to us, that have, similar services are free, some treatments are actually, you pay for it. It's means tested, but if you can afford it, you'll pay £30 for a GP's appointment. Do you sense a shift in the UK when it comes to this?
Well, I think what's fascinating about what's happening in politics right now is there really is a sort of everything is wrong, so let's make incremental changes. And so what we're seeing right now is, the government in introducing this massive pay packet to try to curb, strikes, try to tinker around the edges and bringing in a bit more private provision to really, but what is needed is a massive conversation about how we use our health system. We know that we're an ageing population. We know that treatments are getting more expensive and more sophisticated, and that's a very, very good thing. But the idea that a small group of people that will not be working people will pay additional taxes, which will fund an entirely new and positive investment post-COVID, I do not think stands. And I'm not sure Labour has a political strategy for addressing that change.
Well, you would think that, the Labour government would be the ones to kind of lead on what the public mood would be and kind of set an example. But obviously, famously, in the run-up to the general election, Keir Starmer said himself that he wouldn't use private healthcare if a family member was in dire need of it. So, that kind of just screams what the Labour Party is trying to do in terms of protecting what we love about the NHS and trying to basically reset the whole system, whether it takes. And I'm sure that it'd be kind of difficult for them to kind of bite the bullet and use the private sector, but clearly our back's against the wall as a country.
I thought that was kind of odd when he said that. If a family member was in dire need, he still would never go private. I don't know. Unusual.
Let's take a look at the Sunday Express. Another plan by the Labour government. This is to possibly ban smoking outside. The Sunday Express obviously doesn't take too kindly to that possibility, because they're saying now that they could effectively create violence outside beer gardens that will be turned into bitter flashpoints What's their reasoning for saying this?
Well, they're saying that people basically who don't want to adhere to this new law potentially could cause problems to other people as well as staff, and potentially create more crimes, especially in situations where it's outside football games. We know that as a country we do have a bit of a rowdy nature when it comes to drinking culture and pub culture. So I think that there's concern that there could be more crime and conflict, but it's not really surprising to hear this from the hospitality sector. They're not the industry that are going to welcome this. So I think any excuse they will kind of turn to create different potential problems that this could cause for the government.
Anita, what did you make
I
of
mean,
this story?
I don't think that hospitality is kind of, carping on for bad reasons, because ultimately the hospitality sector is in pieces. Nightclubs barely exist in London anymore, and you've got yet more disruption, and they haven't really ever recovered from COVID. And I think the big concern here really is about bar staff. So are bar staff going to enforce this? That's the challenge, right? Which is you've already got rowdy people that have been drinking, and you're saying, well, you can't smoke here, you have to smoke here. So I think that there is something here that the hospitality industry is concerned about. And personally, I don't know what bars and clubs that other people are going to, but in mine, we're basically legislating here for politeness. Most people, I do not like cigarette smoke, and I find myself easily able to avoid getting secondhand smoke, because most people, if they want to smoke, go away from people that aren't smoking. And I think that's the way it should work in a civilised society.
The reality is the people who would be, quote-unquote, policing this would be the door staff, and realistically, if you are in a very kind of busy nightclub or pub, you will have a member of the security staff who will say to you, you can smoke there, or no, actually, if you're not in the designated smoking area. So things like that do exist already, and I think people expect it. To kind of, some people might say that this might put people going on nights out. I don't think that that's the reality. If you want to go out and enjoy yourself, you'll still do it regardless.
Let's go to the United States. Front page of The Observer. Everyone's favourite feminist, Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, not happy with the... Was it crazy cat ladies or just cat ladies, basically? Now career women choose misery. But just cat ladies. And now career women choose misery. I mean, it is a strange... It depends what's behind the headline, but it's a strange tactic, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, this is all unearthed from years gone by, and I imagine that there is Oppo research that's desperately trailing through all of J.D. Vance's interviews right around the time of Hillbilly Elegy and since, when he was forging a kind of promising-ish career. So this is from September of 2021, when he says that professional women choose a path to misery when they prioritise careers over having children. Yeah. It seems to be this, inferno of distracting and quite aggressive comments specifically at women that means that it detracts from a lot of the messages they want to land about the economy and the border. And I do wonder if Trump is regretting listening to his sons about the selection of
He
J.D.
does also mention men. He also said men and boys in the US were suppressed in their masculinity. I mean, you say they're unearthing comments from a while ago. This is September 2021.
Oh, no, he wasn't a child.
20 years ago.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. But I think what I'm saying is that ideally he wouldn't want to be talking about these things during the campaign because you don't land your messages on policy. But nevertheless, he has said them. I mean, let's see what he says in response.
But also, why didn't they do their due diligence? But then one part of me also thinks, even if they did do their due diligence and knew that he'd already made these comments, I don't think that it would have put off the Trump campaign after some comments that Trump himself has made, grab them by the you-know-what. So I don't really think... It kind of seems as if it's a match made in heaven, really. But, this doesn't help them, especially when they're trying to get the votes of suburban women. And I think that that's where Kamala Harris has really been in her messaging through her campaign, talking about women's rights to their body. And obviously we know about Trump overturning Roe v. Wade. This, in terms of the optics and the whole messaging, just does not land well for them as well.
It'll be interesting to see if she uses this when they have the debate in September 10th, so it'll be interesting to see how she plays it. OK, now let's go to the Sunday People, front page, Oasis. Now, online supernova Sites melt down in 14 million bids for Oasis tickets. Either one of you two were online this morning? No?
No. I feel like if it was Beyonce tickets, maybe I would have been straight to the front of the queue. But I don't even think I can name a single Oasis song.
Well, I know Champagne Supernova.
Oh, yeah, okay, actually.
You're
All right,
missing a lot of puns, if you remember. But still, though, it does seem to be creating a bit of a sensation, and loads of people were online. What have you made of the whole ticketing and the fact that there was this kind of surge pricing on the official website selling tickets?
Yeah, it's always so frustrating when this happens because I think in the UK we're better than, for instance, the US about ensuring we kind of deal with some of the ticket touting. And I know the government is talking about taking further steps to do that. But you do get this price inflation, which means that the kind of Uber fans are either with cold towels on their head and 16 different laptops set up, or they're paying extortionate prices to see the band. I think it's wonderful that people are so excited, but once again, it's with new technology, you get more and more frustrating that there isn't a way to ensure that this doesn't happen and that fans can get their tickets.
So one is ticket touting, but then there was this dynamic pricing within, the main two websites selling. A lot of fans are very angry about that.
Yeah, and I know that they were also talking about, if people were going to buy tickets that were resold, that they potentially wouldn't be able to use them. But with all this stuff about it, kind of reminds me of when people are trying to get Glastonbury tickets as well. And I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I hope I'm not offending anybody, but it seems like there's an older generation that obviously love Oasis. And I do kind of feel for some of them maybe who aren't as tech savvy and don't know all of the little, tips and tricks. No, but sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
But yeah, so maybe it's people who were more tech savvy who were able to do it and then, profit off.
I mean, in
these
fairness,
tickets.
it does seem like they were obviously, inundated with requests. Is there any kind of curiosity? Would you want to see the gigs, on DVD or online when they...
I really just love the fact that 14 million people are this excited. And I think it's lovely because I think music is one of our greatest cultural exports. And actually, British music in particular really punches above its weight globally. And that's why we can't let AI ruin it. And so I think it's really an important moment just to remind everyone how important British music has been through the 90s and now.
And, they really did symbolise the whole Cool Britannia movement at the time. Anita Boateng, Joanna Jarju, stay with us. Coming up, is Prince Harry plotting a return to royal life in the UK? We'll be right back.
We've restored 25,000 hectares. That's equivalent of twice the size of Manchester, or similar number, 25,000 rugby pitches. It's an enormous area across our estate in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And it's hugely exciting to see this work coming to fruition. And that's working with our ranger and countryside teams, as well as tenant farmers and other partners, to help make more space for nature, which is absolutely critical in meeting the nature and climate emergencies. What we've been really focused on over the last decade is making our sites better for wildlife. That means improving the quality of the natural habitat with them. And we've also been extending these areas to help join up these patches of wildlife-rich habitat across the landscape. That's really important because it allows species to kind of move across landscapes, which is a critical response to challenges like climate change. And so this has been a huge amount of work by everybody involved: countryside ranger teams, tenant farmers, as well as our partners. And it's seen us drive, help return some of the wildlife back into the countryside, and is a really good, solid start for reversing the decline of species, for example. We're starting off from a low base. We're one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world, and it means that the work to restore nature is absolutely critical. It's not only critical for the wildlife involved, of course, but nature provides us with so many benefits, and often these are poorly understood. But, for example, the 9,000 hectares of peatland restoration not only helps lock away away the carbon in those soils, our largest carbon stocks in the UK, but also helps absorb rainwater to reduce flood risk. It also cleans water and saves us lots of money in terms of maintaining clean water in our rivers and indeed in our drinking water as well.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng and the broadcaster Joanna Jarju. OK, let's go straight to the Sunday Telegraph and a story here from page. Top earners already fleeing Britain ahead of tax raids. Telegraph saying wealthy individuals and entrepreneurs already leaving the UK as fears grow over a raft of tax rises in Rachel Reeves' first budget, which we have been told is going to be painful, Anita.
Yes, the Iron Chancellor is soon to strike. So yes, we definitely have these reports of people fleeing or potentially fleeing the UK. And in particular, this story is about capital gains tax, where it's kind of hard to compare internationally, but Britain arguably has a slightly lower capital gains tax, particularly kind of income tax dividends, for instance.
Because that's one of the taxes that people think might rise.
Exactly. And it's been well telegraphed, so I think it would be surprising if it didn't go up. But the interesting question that's asked in this article is really about the growth mission. You know, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have said that's their primary mission. And so the question is, as this piece says, you know, entrepreneurs are very mobile. So if you want that investment, you have a combination potentially of higher inheritance tax, non-doms, VAT on private schools. How does that all come together to deliver the kind of an entrepreneurial economy that delivers the growth you need for public services? So the potential that this is a little short-sighted.
OK. Anna?
Well, I think that we need to make a decision in this country whether we're going to put up with what we've had in the last 14 years in terms of non-dom tax statuses, in terms of things that we've seen with Tory sleaze, and really the people at the top of the food chain being the people who benefit the most, or whether we're going to have a fairer society. And there has to be a dividing line between Labour and the Conservatives. I know that there's certain things, you know, in addition to capital gains tax, like inheritance tax, like the VAT on private schools, but I really believe that when it comes down to it, it's always kind of like a scare tactic that people use, these wealth advisors, to obviously protect their clients. And when it comes down to it, people will live in this country if they want to, because it's a great country overall.
We'll find out after the budget. Let's go to the Mail on Sunday now about Prince Harry. Harry asks former aides to help plot his return from exile. Joanna, what are the details about this story? How do we know he's planning to return?
So apparently, Harry isn't kind of satisfied with some of the advice that he's been getting from the US, and he's kind of been getting advice from image-based experts over there on how he can more so rehabilitate his own image in the UK. Some of the sources have said that Harry and Meghan have spent the last 4 years, you know, in kind of self-imposed exile, and obviously he's very concerned about his public image. He's due to be coming back to the UK as well for the Invictus Games. So I think that he's trying to kind of rehabilitate where he is in terms of the public image over here after, obviously, leaving the royal family.
What do you make of it? Does it matter to the nation still, do you think?
I mean, it probably does. Is it likely that this is what's happening? I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, let's go to the Sunday Telegraph. We've got 1 minute left, but it's an interesting story. Front page of the Telegraph: stop testing children on times tables, unions tell ministers. So, and this is obviously primary school children. What are the details?
Yeah, basically, the teachers' unions have been urging the government to scrap these timetables tests that were brought back in 2018 and also get rid of other things like teaching of grammar. And I think what's interesting, and it's definitely worth a read in this piece, is it kind of takes you through some of the kind of socio-economic impacts of this, really, like what kinds of kids naturally learn grammar and which kids don't. You know, Nick Gibb, former Conservative minister, pushes back quite strongly against this. And obviously, we have seen improvement in school standards under the Conservatives. So there's a kind of question about whether people knowing and being able to recite times tables isn't in fact a positive. So let's see.
Joanna, 30 seconds.
Well, it's quite the contrast to what Rishi Sunak was talking about in terms of extending the amount of time that people are studying maths. But I do think that it can be a pressure, yes, but also we've got to be competitive in terms of the children that we're raising in this country internationally. And if we need to test them to make sure they're at the right standard, then so be it.
OK. Anita, Joanna, we're going to have to leave it there for now, but we'll see you again in the next hour to go through the papers again. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, we'll have more on our top story on the 2 deaths following the Notting Hill Carnival.